Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Calling All Creatures. I'm your host, Lori, and tonight we have a great podcast planned out. We are talking about orcas with Monika Wieland Shields. I hope I said all of that correctly. She's the director of the Orca Behavior Institute, and she is nice enough to be on with us tonight because this is kind of their busy time right now. So I was glad she was able to find time to come talk to all of us about orcas tonight. So thank you for being on tonight, Monika. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and you pronounced my name perfectly.
Great. I try. I really do try. So for listeners out there, that are just now learning about orcas for the first time and may not know a lot about them, what makes an orca so unique compared to some of the other whales out there?
Yeah, one of the big things about them is their family structure, where they live in these long-term family units. In some cases, male and female offspring are staying with their mom for their entire lives. And these tight-knit families, make for a very interesting kind of society and the development of cultures, and something that we don't see in very many wild animal species, let alone other whale species. Another thing about them is that they're distributed in every single ocean of the world. So it's not like you can only see them, in the Arctic waters. They are found in tropical waters as well. So pretty much anywhere in the world where you are, if you're coastal, there's a chance that you could see an orca. And then the third thing, it's kind of an intangible. I don't really know what it is, if it's the fact that they have tall dorsal fins or their black and white markings, but they just have this incredible charisma that seems to immediately draw people in. Whales and dolphins are fun to watch no matter what the species, but something about orcas in particular is just awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I know when some of my friends heard that we were doing this podcast, they were like, "Oh, I got to make sure I listen to that," because they really like orcas. So, they are a really cool species of whale.
It's definitely not a hard sell. People are just sort of innately fascinated with them.
Yep, exactly. And since we were kind of on the topic and you mentioned it, can you just go ahead and explain what an orca pod is and how this family relationship shapes their lives?
Yeah, well, like I said, they live all around the globe, and everywhere that you find them, they're in these distinct populations that are specialized to feed on what's available in that area. So, as a species, they're the undisputed top predator in the ocean. Pretty much anything in the ocean, whether it's a great white shark or a large whale species or any of a wide variety of fish species, it's probably on the menu for an orca somewhere in the world. And so because they occur in all of these different populations, we find some subtle differences in their habitats, their behaviors, and their social lives. So like I said, the core relationship in kind of any killer whale society is between a mother orca and her offspring. So they're primarily matrilineal in that sense, where it'll be a female and her offspring, and in some cases multiple generations after that, all traveling together. But depending on what their prey is, they may be better suited to being in a large or a small group. So in some cases, I'm here in the Pacific Northwest off the coast of Washington State, we have a mammal-eating killer whale population where they prefer to be in smaller groups. And so the primary unit is mainly a female and her immediate offspring. We'll see typically like 3 to 6 orcas traveling together. We have another population of fish-eating killer whales. And because historically salmon that they were feeding on here were very abundant, they typically occur in much larger groups. We might see 20, 30, or 40 of them traveling together. And it's with those orcas that we typically talk about pods, where it's several related matrilines that are traveling with one another together. And sort of the definition of a pod, as it applies to orcas, is a group of whales that travels together more than 50% of their time. But like I said, there's kind of some subtle variations on the social structure depending on where you are in the world.
Okay. So would it be kind of safe to say that these different groups of orcas, I mean, besides, being either mammal or fish eating or whatever, that they may have like their own types of traditions or cultures, or even maybe their own language, or is that all kind of about the same across a world between them?
No, it's definitely different. So they have their own, hunting strategies, some of which are sort of passed on within families, and so those are definitely specific to these different populations. And their vocalizations are different as well. We don't know if it's truly different languages or just different dialects, but vocally you can tell different populations of killer whales apart just by the sounds that they're making, even if you never see one of them. So they're definitely known for kind of their social and cultural traditions that are unique depending on where you find them in the world.
Okay, well, yeah, so that kind of makes sense. So then they're all going to be kind of different. So awesome. And then you had mentioned that they are, I guess you might say, one of the top predators of the sea. So as I was looking some stuff up for tonight's podcast, I saw that sometimes orcas might get called wolves of the sea. Do you think that nickname is kind of accurate for them, or is that something that someone just threw out there?
It definitely is in terms of their hunting strategies, and I can definitely see the parallel there, where you think of a pack of wolves that like cooperatively takes down a prey species that's much larger than they are, and orcas will do that as well, where it's a very coordinated attack on whatever it is that they're going out of. So in that sense, I think it's a fitting description. But there's some pretty striking social differences again between orcas and wolves, where wolves primarily have like an alpha male and female, right, that wolves will stay together. And a lot of people, when they see an orca family group, they'll see a big adult male. The orcas the males are distinct because the dorsal fins can get up to 5 or 6 feet tall. And the original thought by a lot of researchers and still by members of the public today is like, oh, that must be the dominant male. But more often than not, that's the adult son traveling right next to his mom, and she's the one calling the shots. So a little bit different there than how a wolf pack operates.
Okay. So then do the male whales only come into play when it's like the mating season, and then they're just kind of off on their own, and then it's just the mom and the offspring?
Well, they will stay with her as an adult, so the adult males will still be traveling with their moms in most cases, and they're part of that core family unit, and so they are taking care of their younger siblings, their nieces and nephews. We see adult males babysitting calves that are family members of them, and they do participate in the hunts as well. So their only opportunities to mate, though, because they're always with their immediate family, comes when they meet up with other family groups of the same type of killer whale. And so when that happens, they will intermix and socialize, and mating might occur. But if the female orca that he breeds with has a calf, that calf will stay with her and her family group, and he will go back and spend the rest of his life with his mom and his siblings. And so the fathers don't really play a direct role that we know of in the raising of their own calves. They are more involved in their natal family group, in whichever group they were born into.
Well, that's interesting to know. Yeah, that is quite a bit different than, I guess, wolves.
Exactly, yeah. So not an alpha male and alpha female, just an alpha female when it comes to orcas.
Right. So how intelligent are orcas, and what are some examples that you could give us of some of their, problem-solving or social skills that they have?
I think we don't even really comprehend fully how smart orcas are. It's a difficult task to measure intelligence in another species, and we look for things like, language or tool use or things, or culture is another one, and we can see evidence of those all in orcas. But in terms of some specific examples, I think the fact that they are able to figure out how to kill and eat every species in the ocean. We have seen, for example, a single female orca make quick work of an adult great white shark because she knew to flip it upside down so it would stop and not be able to breathe anymore. We see them, learn how to create like surges of waves to wash seals off, ice in Antarctica.
Wow.
They're definitely problem solvers when it comes to figuring out how to get whatever prey item it is that they're after. But another one for me is that they're these top predators, so they obviously have incredible physical capacity to do what they do in the ocean, but they are very rarely aggressive with one another. So we don't see like territorial fights or like males competing for females or anything like that. And so within their societies, they undoubtedly have conflict. Any social living species, would have some type of conflict, but they seem to have a way to resolve it that doesn't involve violence. And however it is that they do that and that they navigate that, I think is a sign of real intelligence, because it's certainly something that humans haven't figured out how to do yet.
Right? I was just going to say, maybe we should be studying these orcas a little more and learning this stuff.
Exactly. I think there's a benefit to that for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. So I know, because we're talking about orcas, being able to prey on great white sharks and stuff. Now, is there, because I know great whites can get to be quite large. What happens if you say I guess, you probably normally just come across the lone orca whale. They're usually at least in their maybe mother and offspring pods, because I was going to say, what happens if you happen to have an orca run across a great white that just happens to be a little bit bigger than them? Does the orca still stand a pretty good chance because of their knowledge about flipping them, or?
Yeah, they do, but like you said, they are typically in social groups of some sort, and so there are places in the world where they are, killing large baleen whales, like whether it's humpback whales or gray whales, or in some cases even blue whales, that are much, much larger than them. But because of their cooperative hunting techniques, they kind of take turns so they don't all get tired out, and they have different roles that they play within a hunt. So they're definitely able to figure out how to take down prey that is much larger than them if they're one of the populations that focuses on those larger species.
Mm-hmm. I was actually, and it's funny because you were talking about them making the wave surges to watch the seals off the ice. I was actually watching a documentary, and they were learning, I think it was a mother teaching offspring, but they were learning to ride the waves partway in on the beach to try to grab the seals that didn't get away far enough, and then how to get back out after they did that if they, had to try again. So it was pretty interesting to see them teaching and learning that skill.
Exactly, and it's how, regardless of what type of orca you are, it's pretty much how you learn what to eat and how to eat it. Is you will observe from your mom how what techniques your family uses, and you'll specialize those over time. And some of those, like the almost intentional beaching, where they're grabbing seals or sea lions off the beach, is a high risk behavior, because if you mess it up, you might end up stranded on the beach yourself. And so it takes a lot of precision and practice and learning to hone a lot of these techniques. And so again, another sign of orca intelligence in their training and kind of dedication to honing these behaviors by learning from one another. Yep.
I know. I found it fascinating that they were doing that. I was just like, wow. And then, because there was a couple of times there I was really wondering if it was going to be able to get back off the beach or not. So,
right?
They were able to. So obviously, I think we all kind of know, that whales communicate with each other a lot of times with like their clicking and their tonal songs and stuff like that. I'm assuming orcas kind of communicate with each other basically in the same way. Have you guys learned as much about the orcas' communication listening to them as maybe you have listening to some of the other whales?
Yeah, so they make three different types of sounds. They make echolocation, which is like the click trains that are sort of their biosonar, and so that is how they navigate throughout their environment and find prey in some cases, because underwater it can be pretty dark and murky, and so vision isn't as useful. So a lot of times they're using echolocation, so sound rather than sight to sort of find their way through the ocean world. The second type of call that they make is a whistle, and whistles are kind of the most common social vocalization in a lot of dolphin species, and orcas are technically the largest member of the dolphin family, so they do make whistles, but not quite as frequently as some other dolphins do. But their primary social vocalization is something that we call a discrete call, and it's a short, like 1 to 2 second tonal call that has a distinct structure that is, again, unique to these different family groups. And so all whales are making these short calls, but they have different patterns depending on different groups that you're a part of, and those also seem to be socially passed down from one family to another. So we know that the different dialects that they're vocalizing with are some type of a badge of social identity that, tell anyone else in the ocean, what type of killer whale you are, and maybe even specifically which specific family that you are a part of. But in terms of what they're communicating about and how their communication system works, we have basically made no progress in deciphering what they're talking about. Their brains are amazingly complex and are wired for processing acoustic information, I think, in a way that humans can't even comprehend, because we're so vision dependent most often. And we've tried seeing if we can link, is there a specific call that means there's fish over here, or a specific call that means, I'm going to breach out of the water now, or something like that. And there just has not been any success in sort of creating those one-to-one links between specific calls and specific behaviors. So in terms of how their communication system functions, we actually, know a lot less than we do for some other wild animal species. But I think that's a testament to how complex it is.
I would at least think, if they're maybe out there hunting, obviously, you would think that some of their calls and stuff, I would think, would be directing each other in their hunting and techniques and stuff like that to get their prey. I would assume
exactly, so. But then we have our mammal hunting killer whales here who, hunt cooperatively in groups, and a lot of times if we drop a hydrophone, which is an underwater microphone, to try and listen to them, often they're completely silent during a hunt. And so wow. It just, it begs the question of how does each whale know what their role is to play, and how are they coordinating if they aren't communicating at times. So far more questions than answers when it comes to orcas.
Yeah, then that would kind of lead me to wonder about genetic, passing things down actually genetically from one generation to another, possibly, so that, maybe, I don't know, maybe a certain genetic orca plays this role, and I don't know. It's right, like you said, yeah. It's more questions. It's interesting to think about.
Yet we see all this social learning, which kind of, contradicts the, genetic sort of instinctive theory about it. But one theory of how they're coordinating during hunts and that sort of thing is that their unique black and white coloration actually might help them see body position relative to one another when they're in close proximity, like pursuing, a seal or a sea lion or something like that. Mm-hmm. So because they're mostly white on the bottom and black on their backs with some white patches, they can probably tell, what's the orientation of the other orca, and, what direction are they coming at the prey, and how can I assist from this side, and that sort of thing. So in those cases, when they're cooperatively pursuing prey together, they might be close enough to actually use vision over sound. That's my best theory anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like you said, there's a lot more questions to be asked, I guess, out there, and maybe one day breakthrough will be made, and you researchers like you guys will figure more out when it comes to their language and their talking and stuff like that. So
Yep.
It might be interesting to see what they're thinking sometimes. But then again, maybe you don't want to know what they're thinking.
Exactly.
Probably thinking, look at those.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know, right? They're probably thinking, look at those silly two-legged beings up there. So something that's kind of been catching my attention a little bit in the headlines has been about, for some reason, it seems like the orcas are interacting more and damaging boats and stuff a lot more than what they ever have in the past. Do you know what's kind of going on with that? I mean, is it just a matter of fact of, something like everything else, we're just encroaching a lot more on their territory than what we used to, so things have gotten, more in that aspect, so now we notice it more, or do you think there's something else going on?
I think there's something else going on. So we've already talked a little bit about how there's different populations of orcas around the world, and this is something that's occurring in a very specific geographic area, mostly in the Strait of Gibraltar off the coast of Spain. And it's only occurring within that population of orcas. And so, we have people that come out here to Washington State and have asked, is it safe to get on a boat? Because we've read about these attacks. And
right.
The orcas here are not involved in that at all. It's something that has started and has spread in that one population in that area. So even though there were memes and things out there about the orca uprising and all of that,
right.
Not actually a global uprising, so just occurring in that one place. And while it feels like, I'm sure, an attack to the people on those boats, I've seen videos of this behavior, and from the whale's perspective, to me, it actually looks like a type of play. So being smart and intelligent and social and all the things that they are, they're curious about things in their environment, and they will play with objects in their environment. And for whatever reason, orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar are focusing in specifically on rudders of sailboats. And I think it's probably fascinating to them because it's something that moves. It probably has resistance when the captain is trying to maintain steering when the whale is playing with it, and so it probably becomes even more engaging, maybe a little bit like tug of war, with a dog or something like that. So they just seem to be fascinated by these moving parts on boats, and in a lot of cases their manipulation of it is actually pretty gentle, but because they're big and there can be cables attaching rudders for steering and all of that, sometimes it results in damaging the vessels. So I don't think by any means that they're out to attack the boats or try and sink the boats or get the people on board or anything like that. I think some of the vessels are being disabled just as a result of the behavior, but from the whale's perspective, it definitely looks like a type of play.
Okay, so then people probably don't need to be too concerned about getting on a boat and going out and sailing or doing their thing.
No,
they're not going to be. Not. There's not going to be some pod of orcas coming up to try to destroy their boat because, yeah.
Yeah, and again, like I'm certain for the people that have experienced this that it's scary because these are large animals, they're predators, and they're starting to mess with your mode of transportation, and otherwise you're pretty vulnerable out there in the ocean, and so it feels like an attack to the people that have experienced this, but. That's not the motivation from the whales at all. In fact, one thing I always like to tell people about orcas is that there has never been a documented case of a wild orca killing a human. And so it never seems to be their motivation, even when there are people in the waters. We're just not on the menu for them.
So that kind of now that you've said that, now I've got another interesting question with that being said. So no reports that we know of a wild orca attacking or killing a human being. So then what do you think there has been of attacks from the captive orcas on people, obviously, because we've seen them in the news. So what do you think is the difference between that? Because of the captivity that they're in?
Yeah, exactly. I think those orcas have experienced extreme mental trauma, and potentially even like a psychotic break or something like that. That you see an orca in the wild, they're long lived. They can live as long as humans do. They're in these permanent, in some cases, family groups, and they can swim up to 100 miles or more every single day. And you take a whale out of their family and put them in, what's essentially a bathtub, and ask them to spend their whole life there. Put them, in some cases, with whales from other populations that are not their type of orca. Ask them, to perform tricks and all of that. And, year after year, we've seen that some of these whales just don't handle it very well, and in some cases become aggressive. And so all of the cases of orcas directly leading to the death of a human have all occurred in captivity, and I think are probably just due to the really the torment that they're subjected to in those situations.
Yeah, it's probably good that a lot of those organizations like SeaWorld and them, they're actually not keeping the orcas and stuff anymore in captivity. A lot of them have stopped doing it. So,
SeaWorld has stopped their captive breeding program, which is great. And so they do still have orcas. They're going to, a lot of those animals are now dependent on human care. Right. In some cases were born in captivity and, couldn't even necessarily survive in the wild. So right. They still have and care for those animals, but I do think that that's something that's starting to phase out, at least in North America. Which is good, and a reflection of how much we've learned about them as a species in the last several decades.
Right. So, and there's been a really big turning point, I think, here, especially when it comes to animals in captivity for things like, say, SeaWorld or the circuses and stuff like that. A lot of those places are starting to get more and more away from, because so many people have finally decided that animals are sentient beings and intelligent, and it's not right to treat them and keep them in captivity like this and do the things
exactly.
So
and some species do better in captivity and can thrive in that environment, and certainly like animals that are injured and rehabbed and might not be fit for
right.
Life in the wild again can be incredible ambassadors for their species. Like it's certainly the facilities that are operated ethically can still play a really important role in education and conservation, but I think especially for some of the really large and wide ranging species, it's just captivity is just not a good fit.
Right. Yep, exactly. So it's good to see that some things are changing. It's always a little bit of a step forward, at least progress.
Yeah.
So just one quick last question about the orcas that have been attacking the boats over there by Spain. Why do you guys researchers think that these particular orcas in this particular location are actually going after these boats, but not in other pods or other locations? Is it just because there's more sailboats, or?
It's probably that one whale discovered this behavior, because sometimes they will, especially like juvenile whales will be more curious about things in their environment, and they'll pick things up that they're not supposed to pick up or mess with stuff. And, in some cases, in most cases, really, it's harmless. But in this case, I have a feeling it was, probably a juvenile whale that targeted a sailboat, and because they socially learn from another, others either directly were taught this behavior or saw it and thought it looked like fun, and so wanted to try it. And so one thing that we see in some orca cultures is the equivalent of like a fad, where there's something that's like trendy that catches on, that all the whales start doing, and they learn it from one another, and then after a while it kind of goes out of style and they stop doing it. And the most famous one here in Washington was back in the 1980s, the so-called salmon hats, where our fish-eating killer whales, when they caught a fish, they started surfacing it with it balanced on their heads. And one whale did this, and all the other whales started doing it, and it was really popular for like 2 years, and then it went out of fashion, I guess, and they stopped doing it. And so I really think it's something similar to that, where one whale discovered this unique thing and the others wanted to try it, and it caught on. But again, because they're in these, distinct populations everywhere, it hasn't spread beyond that one population. It's just spread within that population there off the coast of Spain. And we are seeing some evidence that it might be going out of style over there. That I think it was 2 years ago that it was kind of the peak of the vessel-orca interactions, and now it's declining. It still occurs, but not nearly as often. So hopefully it's, I think it's best for the whales and the people, obviously, if this particular fad fades away. But that's how I think it unfolded, and why it only spread there and not all around the world.
Well, it sounds like human being, same thing. We have our fads and our trends, and it lasts for a while, and then we get tired of it, and it goes away, and then we do something else. And
exactly. Orcas are much the same way.
That's funny. Salmon hats. That was great.
Yeah.
It had to have been pretty funny to see them doing that.
Yes, it was before my time, but I've seen photos, and I can only imagine what it would be like to see.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so considering, of course, that orcas are, such large prey animals, what are some of the biggest threats that are actually facing the wild orca populations today?
Well, again, it kind of depends where in the world you are, because every orca is living a unique life depending on where in the world they are. So in some cases they're interacting with vessels in other ways, where they're actually taking fish off long line fisheries or something like that, where they're interacting with fishing gear, and that can pose a risk of entanglement. So in some parts of the world there's concerns about that. Here in the Pacific Northwest, our fish-eating orcas are actually on the endangered species list in both the United States and Canada, and one of the primary reasons for that is declines of the salmon runs that they would historically depend on. So protecting prey species for these different populations is sometimes of great concern. And then toxic contamination in the water is another one, where the pollutants that start as these microparticles in the ocean kind of work their way up the food chain, and being at the top of the food chain, orcas end up carrying these pretty high concentrations of toxic contamination and chemicals sometimes, which can then affect their immune system and fertility and things like that. And so that can be another concern. And I think the final one I'll mention is ocean noise. I mentioned how acoustic these animals are to navigate through their environment and to communicate with one another. And all of the big, shipping traffic, ferry traffic, in some cases like military testing activities, oil exploration, anything we're doing that puts really loud and persistent sound into the water can definitely affect local orca populations as well. So,
Wow.
So they're facing a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it. My goodness, that's quite a bit. So let's talk a little bit about Orca Behavior Institute. What is it exactly? What work is it that you guys do at the Institute? How are you helping to protect orcas? And how did you actually get involved with the Institute?
Well, the Orca Behavior Institute is a nonprofit based on San Juan Island, Washington, and our mission is to inspire conservation of wild killer whales through non-invasive research, bold advocacy, and science-based education. So we were originally inspired to kind of start our work 11 years ago when we were seeing these dramatic changes in the fish-eating and mammal-eating populations that we have here off the coast of Washington, where the fish-eating killer whales that used to be spending all their time here we're now spending more time elsewhere, and their population is declining, while the mammal-eating killer whales used to be more uncommon here, and now we're spending more time here, and their population is growing. So we have kind of this compare and contrast between a thriving population of killer whales and a struggling population. And we wanted to help start collecting some long-term data on their behavior and how they're utilizing their environment to help kind of understand what's going on and why these shifts are happening. The primary factor, again, seems to be the prey availability of less fish than there used to be, more seals and sea lions than there used to be. But we want to, keep collecting this kind of accurate and up-to-date data on habitat use and behavior and social associations and communication and all of these things we've talked about, and make sure that information is being communicated both to the public but also to management agencies and policymakers to help make sure that we're doing everything we can to help the endangered orcas recover, and to make sure that the orcas that are doing well can continue doing well. I actually was a co-founder of the Orca Behavior Institute, so helped create this organization as somebody who lived here in the San Juan Islands and had a science background and was watching the whales on a regular basis and seeing these changes that were happening here with these two populations. And so our first motivation was to, like I said, start collecting some data and doing some research into what was happening here. And then it's expanded since then to kind of offering educational classes and, advocating for policies that protect the marine environment and things like that.
Nice. Do you have anything going on like right now that you might want to tell the listeners about?
Well, regardless of where you live, we offer some fully virtual classes, and we have some new classes coming up this fall that are now open for registration. So if folks want to kind of dive into this world a little more and learn a little more, we have a whale book club that we do twice a year, where we read some books on different aspects of orcas or other species of whales and get together to discuss them, as well as do like movie watch parties and craft projects and things like that. And so that's a kind of a fun winter activity. And then we also just opened registration for our Marine Mammals 101 class, which is a series of 6 virtual lectures that goes in depth with experts on some of our common whale species here on the West Coast. So we talk about both our fish-eating and mammal-eating orcas in that class, as well as humpback whales, gray whales, seals, and sea lions. So lots of opportunities to learn more if folks are interested.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So do they just have to, like, say, go to your website in order to get into the virtual classes and stuff like that? And I was going to say, you might as well give your website info out, too, because if you guys take any kind of, if you're 501c3 based and stuff, if people want to help out or do donations or anything like that. So why don't you give your information out for people?
Yeah, so we are at orcabehaviorinstitute.org is our website. You can find us on social media as well. We're active on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky. So you just look for Orca Behavior Institute, and we should come right up. And we share, these opportunities to participate in virtual classes. We're also sharing updates from the field and, photos and videos of the whales that we're seeing out here, as well as action alerts where it's important for, people to chime in to help with things that will relate to orca protection. So if folks want to give us a follow on social media, we'd appreciate that as well.
Nice. So say if someone, does want to kind of help out support orca conservation or get involved in citizen science, do you have like the information that on your website as well that people could maybe check out to see how they could get involved? Or do you have a couple of tips you could throw out there real quick before we wrap the podcast up tonight?
Yeah, we do have some, additional details on our website. It, of course, kind of depends where in the world you are. If you're here on the West Coast, there's definitely opportunities to be involved as a community scientist. A lot of the sightings tracking that we do and that other organizations are involved with as well, that occurs all throughout the coast, is done by community members who, see and document whales that they encounter and report them and help us track these populations and kind of monitor these trends over time. So there's definitely opportunities, to participate as a community member in the science aspect if you are out in this area. But in terms of conservation, it's definitely something people can support anywhere. One of the really big things that I like to mention for folks is it's really important to know where your seafood comes from and make sure it's being caught in a sustainable fishery. For our endangered fish-eating whales specifically, I always recommend that people don't eat farmed Atlantic salmon. Actually, eating wild-caught salmon is better because the aquaculture industry for salmon is actually really having a negative impact on wild salmon populations. So doing a little research into the seafood that you're eating and making sure it comes from a sustainable source is a fairly simple action that you can take no matter where in the world you live.
Great information to have, and did not know that was impacting the wild salmon like that. That's always good to know. So, good advice, you guys.
Yeah, and if the seafood isn't labeled, just ask whether it's at a restaurant or a grocery store. It just lets whoever's buying the seafood know that you're paying attention and that you care about those types of issues. So. They should certainly know where their seafood is coming from if they're selling it to you. And so, just ask the question, is this wild-caught salmon?
Yeah, that's very good advice. And and it's funny that you said that because I like to watch Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares.
Uh-huh.
And some of these restaurants are like, oh, yeah, we're serving fresh seafood. And it's not fresh seafood, but they have a seafood market like right down the street from them that has fresh seafood. So some of these things that you watch on TV, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's amazing what some of. So good advice. Yes, find out what you're eating before you eat it.
Yeah, not bad advice in general. Just know where your food is coming from.
Right, exactly. You probably would like to know those things before you eat at some of these places. So, oh my goodness. Well, Monika, that's kind of wrapping up the podcast for tonight. I learned a lot more about orcas than I knew before. I hope all the listeners out there did. It was great to hear about them and to hopefully lay some people's fears to rest, that they can get on a boat and not fear getting attacked by an orca.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's one take-home message, that's a good one.
Yes, exactly. There you go, guys. You can go out on your boats. Well, and maybe just wait a little while if you're over there by Spain, because they might be getting over their fad over there. But give them just a little while longer. So, but thank you so much for being on tonight. I am just going to go ahead and announce my next upcoming podcast, and you're welcome to stay on and listen to that if you'd like. But you're also welcome to jump off at this point, because I know people have busy lives and have things to go do. So. Again, though, I do thank you for being on and letting us learn more about orcas and about what the Behavior Institute does.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. And you have a great night. All right, everybody. So now the next upcoming podcast that we're going to have, Monica just got off, is September 3rd. I am going to have Michael Schneider on with me, and he is the founder of Pilots to the Rescue. Pilots to the Rescue. Michael did his first animal rescue mission in 2015. Basically, he has been rescuing dogs in overcrowded animal shelters, and then he takes them to rescues and things like that that aren't as crowded and have good luck getting dogs adopted out. So yeah, him and now he has lots of people helping him out in bigger planes. So he's been flying dogs since 2015 and rescuing them from shelters and finding them nice new homes. So I'm looking forward to having him on to talk about Pilots to the Rescue. And we can learn more about his organization and what they do and how things have been going over the years and what direction they're going to be taking in the upcoming years to come. So anyway, I'm looking forward to talking to Michael. Right now, unfortunately, I can't tell you who I'm going to have on for the podcast on September 17th. I have not been able to fill that spot yet, but I am working on it. I have a couple leads, And so hopefully I will get it filled. And unfortunately, you're just going to have to keep an eye out on the Facebook page to see what's going to come up and what we're going to talk about on that date. So I apologize, but I just haven't been able to get anyone to schedule in for that. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed tonight's podcast. I hope you enjoyed learning more stuff about orcas from Monika. It was a great podcast, and I really appreciated that she came on tonight. And don't forget to come on back and listen in on September 3rd to my podcast with Michael Schneider and talking about his organization, Pilots to the Rescue, and all the great work that they do. So, all right, everybody, you all have a great night, and come on back in a couple weeks and listen to the next one. Bye now.